Catholic Radio in Metro Detroit. This is 990 WDEO, Ypsilanti, Detroit, or on the internet at WDEO.net.
And a good afternoon to you. I'm Al Kresta. Glad you're joining me for another hour where we get a chance to talk about, in this case, maybe the thing that matters most, which is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. My guest, Justin Bass, is the author of a book called The Bedrock of Christianity, The Unalterable Facts of Jesus' Death and Resurrection. It's an outstanding book, and I think you're going to hear why as we talk. Justin is professor of New Testament at Jordan Evangelical Theological Seminary in Amman, Jordan. Before moving to Jordan, he and his family lived in Frisco, Texas, where he was a pastor of a church for 6 years, and an adjunct professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, where, in fact, he earned his Ph.D. in New Testament studies. And, as I said, he's recently published The Bedrock of Christianity, The Unalterable Facts of Jesus' Death and Resurrection. And it's good to have you with me, Justin. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Great to be here.
I think we should begin right where you actually begin the book. You have a quote from the New Testament scholar John Meyer in his book A Marginal Jew, is one of the volumes in that series. Suppose that a
5 volumes at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't sure how big it was anymore.
You've got to get to the resurrection at some point.
Suppose that a Catholic, a Protestant, a Jew, and an agnostic, all honest historians, cognizant of first-century religious movements, were locked up in the bowels of the Harvard Divinity School library. Well, as you point out, that sounds like the beginnings of a joke, but what was Meyer getting at with that?
Yeah, and what Meyer was getting at is really what inspired, one of the main reasons that inspired me to write the book is throughout seminary, as you mentioned, I got a PhD in New Testament studies, and just one of the things that I kept finding deep in these commentaries or, historical Jesus books or books on the New Testament, just again and again, whether the person was Jewish, whether the scholar was atheist, agnostic, it really didn't matter what their background was. They all agreed on certain facts, which I like to call bedrock facts that, are just indisputable. And that's what that was one of the goals I had with this book is, I wanted to have all those bedrock facts in one place. There's a lot of excellent books out there on the resurrection and on the New Testament and on Jesus, but I hadn't found one that just had all of the ones that everyone agrees on. Unless we're putting on the side, of course, people in YouTube comments and people that write Facebook posts and believe in the moon landing never happened or deny the Holocaust. There's always those people. But as far as actual scholars who are credentialed, who are teaching professors across the Western world, they all agree on these bedrock facts about Jesus and the earliest followers of Jesus and the earliest movement, the beginning of the church. And so that's what really I loved, and I that's why I began with that, because I thought that captured what I was going after in that quote from Meyer.
Let's go to one thing that it's funny, because with the rise of the internet and then social media, there are a number of discredited positions that have taken on new life because they circulate, because social media allows people who have eccentric views to gather together and appear to have more social presence than they actually do. But some of these, take for instance the idea that Jesus was a product of, is really a fictional amalgam of ancient myths and other messianic pretenders or false gods, and there was the movie Zeitgeist a few years ago that was people saw on online, which had this idea. So. Who takes that seriously?
Even worse than that was Bill Maher's Religious.
I reviewed that. Oh, that was terrible.
It's hard to get worse than Zeitgeist, but Bill Maher managed to do it.
Yeah. Like, there's not. Can you think of any respected scholars who would even hold to those positions?
As far as, saying that Jesus was just kind of this, mythical figure that some of the earliest, people that we know as Peter and people like that just made up. I mean, as far as full-time teaching scholars, I actually talk about this in one footnote. I think that's what they deserve is, a footnote, these people that,
right.
that say this. Really, you only have two scholars, people who actually have credentials in these areas, who have maybe a PhD in biblical studies or ancient history, who argue this. They're kind of the most famous of the mythicists, and they argue this. But they're not even teaching full time in any seminary or university. They're not actually teaching full time. And so, of all the people who are teaching full time, I don't think there's one. I mean, there may be, one. There's always somebody on the outside on these things, but I couldn't find any that actually would affirm that Jesus did not exist, that are a full-time teaching professor at Yale, Harvard, Oxford. Go down the list. No,
yep.
I couldn't find anybody. And Bart Ehrman, who is a well-known agnostic New Testament scholar, definitely not an ally of the Christian faith. But he actually wrote an entire book refuting this idea and laying out, again, to these bedrock facts about Jesus and about the early church that cannot be denied. And one of them, obviously, is that Jesus existed, that he was crucified, and on and on. So Bart Ehrman became kind of an apologist for the faith for us there.
An ironic moment, yeah.
He was helpful. That book was helpful. It's called "Did Jesus Exist?" It's actually a good book.
It is. Yeah. Let's go to why it's important to know these bedrock facts. I mean, you probably have experienced other fellow Christians who think that it's not. All they know is that Jesus lives in their heart. Or somehow the resurrection is just some sort of assurance of immortality, and it's not really important to get down to the bedrock historical facts. Why is it absolutely important that we get the bedrock historical facts?
That's an excellent question. I would say I'm really writing this book for people like me and probably people like you. I don't think the majority, I think, of Christians, really, even throughout church history of the last 2,000 years, I would say the majority have not believed because of all this real strong historical evidence for the faith. And most people have believed on the Lord Jesus because of some supernatural experience in their heart, in their life. Something happened. The testimony of the Holy Spirit to their spirit. They had some transformation that happened, and really it was an experiential thing, and I'm not discounting that at all.
No, I'm not discounting it either. Yeah, no, I'm I got your point. It's a very good one.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I are on the same page, and so it's the Thomases. I think we're like the Thomases. I want the nail prints. I want to touch the nail prints. This is the way I've been since college. I actually became a Christian in college, and the evidence has always been so important to me to know that, with my five senses and with the historical method, that I can know beyond the shadow of a doubt that this man Jesus, who made such incredible claims, who lived the most beautiful life anyone's ever lived, who claimed to be God, he actually hung on that cross and he died. And then there's this extraordinary amount of evidence that he then rose and left this earthquake in Jerusalem, this wake of the resurrection results. That then led to the singularity. I like to call the church is the singularity. What was the cause of the singularity?
That's right. Yeah.
It would have been the resurrection. So for people, whatever that percentage is of the world and of the church that really need to stand on that bedrock evidence and really don't have really the gift of faith, I would say it's really a gift to just have that faith. The Bible says it, I believe it. I don't need to worry about it. But the people who really want that historical evidence, I love to just show that because it's the grounding in my heart of how I know Jesus is the Son of God and how I know he rose again from the dead. And so I want to lay that evidence out for everybody else, plus also for us to then take it to the world. I think we of course need to, and I know that's what your ministry is all about, we need to go on the offensive because we have this powerhouse, extraordinary evidence to bring to the skeptic, to the unbeliever, to the people of other religions, and show them, hey, Jesus did rise from the dead. You have to deal with him. You have to deal with Jesus. He's not like your founder. He didn't stay dead. He's alive.
Yeah. St. Paul is a critical figure in all this. Usually people think that when they're talking about the resurrection of Jesus, they're talking about the gospel writers. But really, St. Paul is the first important figure here, right?
I think so. A lot of people, and even very, solid scholars will start with the Gospels, and I would, God willing, one day I'll write a book on the Gospels and the solid eyewitness testimony we have from the Gospels. I think, probably Richard Balcom has written an excellent book called Jesus and the Eyewitnesses, where he demonstrates that we have eyewitness testimony in the Gospels. And so the Gospels are, I think, solid, but when you come to the Gospels, though, you're dealing with 200, 300 years of debates with scholars on kind of the liberal and conservative side of the aisle. And so when you're dealing with Paul, though, that's what I loved about it. Again, he's a bedrock eyewitness and a bedrock source. His earliest letters are indisputable, that they are written by Paul, and that the information in them, at least the historical information that he's relaying in them, are just agreed upon by everyone. So this is why I want to start with Paul, because it's just, I don't have to even bring arguments. I mean, if Bart Ehrman and I have a discussion about these issues, we can start with Paul. This is common ground agreement. And I see Jesus doing this, with the Sadducees. He doesn't quote from Daniel when he's trying to demonstrate the resurrection to them. He quotes from the Torah, which is the only scriptures they accepted. He didn't try to argue with them about Daniel. He just said, all right, look what Moses said. And he just goes to that common ground. And I think that's kind of what the apologists have done throughout church history. And so that's the take I like, too. So Paul, is where we should begin, because he's the one who first gives us really all this extraordinary evidence of the resurrection and that Jesus did, in fact, rise from the dead bodily.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about his biography and why he's situated to make the claims that he made, and where he derived his evidence, and was he in fact an investigator himself of some sort? So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, the most exciting place to start with Paul is really his conversion. I mean, I think it's hard to deny, his conversion is probably the greatest conversion of all church history. There's been some amazing conversions, but Paul is hands down just the most dramatic transformation. We have, 3 testimonies of it in the book of Acts, but we also have Paul in his own letters testifying to this transformation. And again, this is not debated. Everyone agrees that Paul was a Pharisee that was persecuting the church. He believed Jesus was accursed of God. I mean, he had been nailed to a tree. Like Deuteronomy said, he was cursed. He was a dreamer. He's leading Israel astray. And so he thought he had every right to violently, if need be, destroy his movement and to protect the purity and the monotheism of Israel. And then everything had a turnaround. He then believed, and again, everyone agrees, he at least believed that Jesus appeared to him on the Damascus Road. And then from then on, probably 30, maybe 35 years after that, he then spends doing nothing but proclaiming Jesus as Lord all across the Roman Empire, and even, we know, died. Was martyred for that faith, probably beheaded under Emperor Nero. But it was in those early years, right after his conversion, he tells us in Galatians chapter 1 and 2, he kind of lays out his biography, like what happened and where he went. And the most significant, I think, that I argue in my book, meeting is when he met with Peter himself. Right. And he did this 3 years, he says, after his conversion on the Damascus Road. He went to Jerusalem. He hung out with Peter for 2 weeks, he tells us. Wow. And he also saw James, the brother of Jesus. And so it's just fun to, use your historical imagination. We're not told all the things that happened, but what we can, I think, deduce, unless you're just insane, you have to admit that they talked about Jesus. Right. Paul and Peter spending 2 weeks together, you don't have video games, you don't have internet, you don't have Netflix, what are you going to be doing for 2 weeks with the man who spent 3 years with the chief disciple of Jesus for 3 years? You're going to be you're going to want to know everything about this man who you thought was a false prophet, but now you know is the Son of God. And so I think this is where Paul received a lot of this information that we get in his letters. A lot of these creedal statements and hymns to Jesus, he probably got that from Peter and James and some of the earliest followers of Jesus right there in Jerusalem. And so this is what makes him such an important bedrock eyewitness.
And he also says that he went there to obtain information. That's one way of translating the Greek there. He went there to obtain information from Peter, which is so clearly he went there with a desire to know more than he had already known through his own encounter with Jesus on the Damascus Road.
Exactly right.
So,
one of the scholars says he wasn't there talking about the weather. They weren't talking about the weather. They had some specific. They had a specific agenda. That was for sure.
Now, this is important because people. You always hear people say, because they're thinking in terms of the Gospels. So they always say, well, the Gospels were written, 60 AD, 80 AD, whenever they date them in the first century, and they think that we have this tunnel period between the time that Jesus was on the earth and when he was crucified and his resurrection began being proclaimed. But then there's a period of a few decades, and then you get the idea that distortions could have crept in, or they usually talk about the telephone game, where you begin saying one thing and it comes out distorted in the end. Paul,
one Bart Ehrman likes to use.
yeah, he does. But Paul, I think, puts the lie to that, doesn't he?
He destroys it. Especially when it comes to, you might be able to still argue that a little bit, like with the sayings of Jesus and things like that. That's when you really need to show that the authors of the Gospels are eyewitnesses, and they themselves were there and heard Jesus. But when it comes to who Jesus was, when it comes to his resurrection, his death, with Paul, none of this stuff could have been made up. Paul himself was there. He was there within years of it happening. He was there with the earliest followers of Jesus. And that 1 Corinthians 15 passage that's so important, where he basically quotes this creedal statement about Christ's death and burial and resurrection and appearances. He then says at the end of it, in verse 11, he says, and this is what we preach, and this is what you believe. We are all in agreement. He basically says...
Hold it there, Justin. In the gospel story, the crowds come looking for Jesus because he had just multiplied loaves to satisfy their physical hunger. And he instructs them to seek something better. He says, do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. Now, many of us who have the habit of frequent communion may find this coronavirus lockdown a trial for our spiritual life. And even so, we should take to heart a bit of wisdom from Thomas Kempis in The Imitation of Christ. He who is devout may every day and every hour receive Christ spiritually. He is invisibly fed as often as he devoutly calls to mind the mystery of the Incarnation and the passion of Christ, and is inflamed with the love of him. The churches will soon be open again, God willing, and until then, please consider maintaining your support for Ave Maria Radio at AveMariaRadio.net.
Hi, this is Joe Vitale with American Retirement Advisors. The recent coronavirus scare is crippling our market and causing a lot of people to panic. Don't panic. Remember, God is in charge, and we will get through this as we have before. But make sure that you are properly positioned for market volatility. Call me today at 855-756-5700 or visit us online at aradvisorsinc.com, and we can make sure you're positioned properly for the long haul. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Ray here. My newest book, Raising Upright Kids in an Upside-Down World. Help you stand strong against a culture no longer on your side, to identify all of the forces trying to misshape your child, to help you stand strong against those forces, to resist them, to recognize them, so you can raise the kind of kid you wish to raise. You can get the new book at AveMariaRadio.net. That is AveMariaRadio.net.
Food for the Journey, Sister Ann Shields.
The book of Sirach, chapter 15, verses 15 to 20. If you choose, you can keep the commandments. They will save you. Before man are life and death, good and evil, whichever he chooses shall be given him. Immense is the wisdom of the Lord. No one does he command to act unjustly. To none does he give license to sin. It's we who decide to turn away. It's we who choose sin over virtue. God never coerces. If he did, it would not be love. He offers. He keeps offering himself. We have free choice. We have a free will. What do we choose? You have to make certain decisions. What decisions are you making? See, don't just drift. Make some decisions. Is my life in accord with the gospel? Am I living out my faith? If someone were to judge me today, would they find me guilty of being a Christian? Would it be evident who I am and to whom I belong?
Sister Ann Shields gives you food for the journey, weekday mornings at 6:45 and again at 11:30 on 990 Ave Maria Radio.
This program is brought to you in part by Charity Mobile, a proud partner of Ave Maria Radio for over 15 years. Charity Mobile is the pro-life cell phone company and has sent nearly $2 million to thousands of pro-life charities. 4G LTE coverage is available nationwide, and 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite pro-life charity. A video introduction is available at CharityMobile.com. Charity Mobile. Everyday living, effortless giving. CharityMobile.com.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Kresta. With me is Justin Bass. He's the author of The Bedrock of Christianity, The Unalterable Facts of Jesus' Death and Resurrection. And the book makes clear that Christianity is based on indisputable facts. That if you were to bring scholars from the world of biblical studies, ancient history, classics, archaeology together to fight about the details of Jesus' life, there are certain bedrock facts that they would all agree on. Now, this is not to say that Christianity is the indisputable interpretation of these facts. So there are scholars who believe these are indisputable facts, but they don't necessarily become Christians, right? They have another interpretation for the facts. But these are the facts that everybody agrees on. We were talking about Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. And I want you to spend a little time telling us why that is such, his formulation of the tradition that he received. Why is that so significant?
Yeah, he says I'm looking at it right here, in 15 verse 3, he says, "For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received." And then what most scholars agree on is this, he introduces this creed, basically quoting this, what some call a creedal tradition, a creedal formula. Right. But it's written in such a way, and even if you put it in the original language together, it's written with symmetry. It shows that it was kind of in a memorizable formula, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and then he appeared to Peter, to the 12, to more than 500, then to James, the brother of Jesus, to all the apostles, and then Paul adds himself into that kind of list of resurrection appearances. He says, last of all, he appeared to me. And it's that language of, for what I received, I also delivered to you. Yeah. Again, scholars are pretty much unanimous that Paul is using this language of that was common actually with the Jews at the time. We see it even in the Mishnah, that this language of transmission, where Paul must have received this at some point in the past, sometime before he planted the church in Corinth, which most date to somewhere around 49, 50 AD. So he received it sometime before that, and it's that meeting, that amazing meeting that we were talking about, where Paul and Peter hung out for 14 days. That's one of the prime places that scholars say that's probably where Paul would have first learned the information, like he appeared to Peter and he appeared to James. It only makes sense. I mean, he's not going to learn that probably before that. He's not going to learn that if he's already met with Peter. He's not going to get it after that. So it's when he first met with Peter and James, as Galatians 1:18 and 1:19 says, that's when he probably received this creedal information that he then delivered. So this creedal tradition then would date back to within 5 years of Jesus' death, but that's just when Paul received it. So it was probably formulated even earlier, and we don't know how early it was, but
it could have been months.
Even James, it could have been months. I mean, that's what this one more moderate New Testament scholar, estimates, I mean, his name's James Dunn, he says it may have been months after the resurrection, maybe after the Ascension and after Pentecost, very soon they were putting together kind of a creed, the true Apostles' Creed. The apostles came together and put together this creedal tradition that they would then go and proclaim and use with new converts to memorize, to know the bedrock of their faith.
Yeah. This is, and is 1 Corinthians 15 again? This is dated earlier than the actual written Gospels.
That's right. Yeah. Even the conservative dating of Mark is generally, I think the earliest I see it at is somewhere in the late 50s, and 1 Corinthians is like 50, 54, 53 AD.
Right. Now, what can we know with certainty about the crucifixion? Where do you begin with that?
Yeah, with the crucifixion, that's really kind of my first. I have four main bedrock facts that pertain to the resurrection that I think builds the case, that's the real grounding for the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. Just like you said as you introduced this, that the facts that are indisputable, but not everybody interprets in the same way. So some people try to get around them in some other way than Jesus actually rising from the dead. But the four facts that I focus on are the crucifixion. That's where I start. I mean, for him to rise from the dead, he had to die.
Right.
And then it's the actual claim of his resurrection, so that they were actually making this innovative, unparalleled claim. No one had ever made this claim, and there's no written record of any type of thinking at the time that a Jewish Messiah would rise again from the dead in the middle of history. Resurrection was always a future thing at the end of the world. And so what they were claiming was unparalleled in the history of ideas. And then the third one is the appearances, that he appeared to all these people, individuals and groups and men and women and even an enemy like Paul. And then the last one is the most obvious one. You can't deny it, like you can't deny the suns in the sky, which is the indestructible movement, I like to say, of the church. The church has began in Jerusalem, and it's gone on to really overtake the world. We're looking at, almost a third of the world professes, at least, to be followers of Jesus of Nazareth. That's just incredible. But I start with the crucifixion.
Yeah. Crucifixion was a common type of death, right?
Yeah, and it seemed to be, the slave's death. Probably the majority of people crucified in the Roman Empire. I think those estimates I've seen, maybe a third of the Roman Empire were slaves. And so probably most people who were crucified, if they were crucified, were slaves who were criminals or who went against their masters or things like that. And then the special case of people who were crucified, especially in the Roman Empire, would have been people who fought against Rome, people who were in some way a threat. And so Rome would say, okay, we're going to nail you to a cross in public in front of everybody and have you die this agonizing death to show as a deterrent to make sure no one else wants to take up a sword against Rome. And that's really why they crucified Jesus. I mean, they were definitely, Pilate was definitely pushed, but ultimately it was his claim to be king, to be the Messiah. That's how Pilate justified crucifying him, because they would have thought that he was just like one of these bandits or revolutionaries that was going to start a riot or start some kind of war with Rome. And so they feared him in that way, and that's why they put above the cross, "This is the King of the Jews, Jesus of Nazareth," because they thought he was just one of these many messianic pretenders that we know about at the time. But interestingly, Jesus in every way was nonviolent. I mean, he said even to Peter, "Put your sword back."
Right.
He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. So he was different than all those other guys because he didn't fight. He in every way did not fight against Rome, but they crucified him anyways because of really what he said, really his claims.
So the earliest evidence of Jesus' death then would be somewhere between months to 10 years, and it would be related to that creedal tradition that Paul refers to in 1 Corinthians 15:3. Christ died.
That's right.
And Christ died for our sins. Go ahead.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't say Christ was crucified, but again, everyone agrees that behind that statement of Christ died is the crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. No one would debate that. But the first mention of actual crucifixion would be in Paul's letters. I mean, this is in Paul's letters, but as far as chronologically, Paul is the one who says how many. He talks about I want to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified, and so he's talking about Jesus' crucifixion all throughout his letters, and there's no other meaning for that other than the fact that he was actually nailed to this cross about 20 years before he was writing this.
Yeah. He died for our sins according to the Scriptures. So, for our sins is basically a theological interpretation of his death.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and what I love about that is it shows that it shows that the earliest followers of Jesus were interpreting his death as a substitutionary atonement. I mean, they were interpreting it as he died paying for sins. He died bearing the sins. And I think according to the Scriptures, most agree the passage that they're thinking of has to be Isaiah 53, because this is the only passage in the Old Testament where you have this direct statement of someone, and in this case, the suffering servant of Yahweh, bearing the sins of the nation. He bore our sins. By his wounds we are healed. And so this is probably the passage they're alluding to. And I even make the argument that this needs further development, maybe in another book, but that Jesus at the Lord's Supper, which Paul quotes in 1 Corinthians 11, he says, he says, "This is my body," and he says, "This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for you." And I think it's one of the Gospels that even elaborates on that says, "Poured out for your sins." And when you go back to the new covenant in Jeremiah 31, he says, "I will remember your sins no more." So this language, these ideas probably come from Jesus himself. Jesus probably taught his disciples, this is what my death means, and that's what he was doing at the Lord's table. He was teaching them that.
He was buried. What do we know about the burial?
Yeah, burial, I mean, it's in this earliest creed, so I'm dumbfounded that this also isn't a bedrock fact. I think we have every reason to believe that he received a proper burial, and then the fact that all four Gospels testify that this member of the Sanhedrin, Joseph of Arimathea, who would make him up? I mean, he comes on the scene, and he's kind of a secret follower. He takes Jesus' body down and puts it in the tomb. But I really just think it's because of the powerhouse case of an empty tomb with the appearances. And no one can deny the appearances, the belief in the appearances. And so the only thing that some of the scholars that don't want to admit, I guess, how strong the case is for the truth of Christianity, they just say, okay, no, we don't know if there's an empty tomb. We don't know if he was actually buried. Maybe he was just discarded. He was thrown somewhere. So in my book, I explain why the burial and the empty tomb aren't actually bedrock facts. But that in no way means that they're not historical. It just means that the scholars across the board don't accept it,
have the same degree of consensus on it. Yeah,
you don't have that 99% kind of high bar of consensus. But again, I think you have it again in the earliest source when Paul says he was buried. It's in the passive. He was buried by whom? The story of Joseph of Arimathea probably came to people's minds when this was repeated, and so I think we have every reason to believe that he was given this proper burial by Joseph of Arimathea. In fact, even some of the ancient sources around the time, Josephus, this Jewish historian, and another Jew named Philo of Alexandria, a more Hellenistic Jew, both of them testified that Jews who were crucified were given proper burials by their family. The Romans would permit that, especially on high holy days. And so in every way it fits what happened to Jesus as testified in the Gospels fits with everything we know.
Yeah, and it's there in that very early creedal tradition that Paul received. And I think there's nothing before that a skeptic could bring up that would be more compelling.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Now, hold it there if you would. We're going to continue with Justin Bass. It's an outstanding book, The Bedrock of Christianity, The Unalterable Facts of Jesus' Death and Resurrection. I'm Al Kresta, and we're going to be right back.
My dad, sharp as a tack, but getting him out for a dentist trip got harder every year. When he moved to the senior residence where he lives now, Dr. Mansour's portable dental service was a godsend. Dr. Mansour comes to wherever the homebound patient may be, whether in a nursing facility or the comfort of home. All the services you'd expect in a dentist office brought straight to the patient's door. Call 586-873-5567. That's 586-873-5567 or portabledentalservices.com.
You don't think it'll happen to you twice. First, it was a fire. My agent was right there and helped me rebuild. Then the tornado destroyed everything, again. Both times, my independent agent and auto owners took care of me like someone takes care of family.
For whatever lies ahead, we're always there. Auto Owners Insurance.
For your no-obligation quote, please call Choice Insurance at 734-641-4200.
I'm Dr. Stan Williams, and this is Evidences for Christianity. After Christ's death, resurrection, and ascension, when the apostles were preaching to large crowds, do you suppose they exaggerated or made things up? Remember, there were persons in many of the crowds who were unfriendly to the church, yet who were eyewitnesses to Jesus' life. The Pharisees, for example, were famous for trying to catch Jesus in a linguistic trap, and surely they would have laid in wait for Jesus' followers. This is impressive. The fact that the crowds contained hostile persons who would have known what was true or not. And if there were things said that were not true, the church could not have survived. But it did, and it thrived. And that's evidence for the authenticity of Christianity. To explore more, go to AveMariaRadio.net. Under Resources, look for me, Dr. Stan Williams.
This is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. The Supreme Court of the United States is currently hearing a major abortion case. It deals with a Louisiana law that seeks to protect women, their rights, and their health. The Court of Appeals upheld that law, but the abortion industry insisted on challenging it in the Supreme Court. Abortionists consistently oppose requirements that they live up to basic medical standards. And that is why Louisiana is also challenging the idea that these abortionists can claim in court to speak for the mothers who get abortions. The fact is that they oppose the laws that would protect those same women. This case is not just about Louisiana. It is about every state, every abortion clinic, and every woman across our nation. Pray for the success of the pro-life side in this case at SupremeCourtVictory.com. This is Father Frank Pavone on Ave Maria Radio.
This program is brought to you in part by the nonprofit St. Paul Street Evangelization. St. John Paul II stated that for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love, and the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation. So we know we're called, but how do we do it? St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Abortion,
pornography,
embryonic stem cell research,
corporate contributions to Planned Parenthood. Do you invest in companies that are engaged in these practices? The Ave Maria mutual funds do not, and their investment portfolios reflect that. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. You can learn more about the Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Kresta. With me is Justin Bass. He is professor of New Testament at Jordan Evangelical Theological Seminary in Amman, Jordan, and also has served as adjunct professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, where he also received his Ph.D. And we're looking at his work, The Bedrock of Christianity, The Unalterable Facts of Jesus' Death and Resurrection. Let's jump, when we have that remarkable creedal tradition that St. Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 15, which could date back to within just a few months of Jesus' resurrection. I mean, it's early. It's probably one of the things that he learned from his trip to Jerusalem that he spent with Peter and James. But let me go to the resurrection itself, because this is where people begin to wonder, what could you possibly be saying? Because skeptical scholars themselves don't buy into Jesus' resurrection from the dead.
Yes.
So tell me what's the bedrock facts that are related to the resurrection.
Yeah, I think what I'd want to do really to bring in the big guns on this, if I just had a short time with an unbeliever who was open-minded, I'd want to talk about these appearances. So interestingly, we were talking about the empty tomb and the burial, and what's interesting is even in the Gospels, it's not the empty tomb that convinces really anybody
That's right.
That Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, it led to more puzzlement. It led to more questions.
What happened? Right.
Did someone take the body? Did the gardener take the body? I mean, they didn't know what had happened. John, the Apostle John, indicates that he believed something, at least, when he went into the tomb, but we don't know exactly what he believed at that point. It's really the appearances. It's once Jesus actually shows up right in front of them and says, touch me here, touch the wounds, touch the scars where I was crucified. That these appearances, that these are what really transformed the world. And so when it comes to the bedrock fact of the appearances, it's that these people specifically that are mentioned in the earliest creed, Peter, Jesus' chief disciple, James, his own brother, and then Paul, who was an enemy, Jesus appeared to him while he was ready to destroy his church. I mean, this is why I think Paul is called the Apostle of Grace, because he knew more than anybody why that he didn't deserve what Jesus did for him. And so, Jesus appeared to Paul, Peter, James, even the 12. So he appeared to a group at one time. This is minus Judas. They were probably called. It was probably a popular title.
Right.
Called them the 12, but Judas had been gone at this point. Even some of the Gospels, when they say it, they say 11, so they get more mathematically correct there. But it's probably just a title in the original creed.
Sure.
So it's a bedrock fact that all these the group and even you can add Mary Magdalene, even though she's not mentioned in the creedal statement, she's the first to see Jesus according to all four Gospels, and so even the appearance to Mary Magdalene is really a bedrock fact as well. So when it comes to all these appearances, the bedrock fact that everyone would agree on is that they believed Jesus appeared to them, risen from the dead. That man that had been crucified, that they had followed for 3 years, that had died, that was a corpse, that was about to start rotting, they believed that corpse had been transformed and appeared before them and spoke to them and even ate and drank with them. Some of the sermons in Acts say that. And so my question then to the skeptic is, what did they see then? What did they see? What led them to then go on and spend the rest of their life, and especially we know with Paul, suffering? I mean, just the other autobiography of Paul is in 2 Corinthians 11. You can just read about how boring his life was, how he was just, shipwrecked multiple times. He's getting stoned. He's getting beaten all over the place.
Right.
He could have put this at any point. He could have gone to Thessalonica like his buddy Demas did and just give it all up. Just go to Vegas. Forget all this. We don't need to be proclaiming this crucified man has risen from the dead. If he really didn't rise from the dead, Paul was absolutely convinced, and we have every reason to believe it. So what then caused, what's the cause of this singularity? What led to these people going out and proclaiming this message and then giving their lives for it? And we know Peter and James and Paul, we have strong historical evidence that those three in particular did give their lives for this. So the unbeliever is pressed for an explanation of how of what they saw and what transformed their life. And really, to be honest, the best answer that's given that I find for the people that are really taking it seriously is, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of this cautious agnostic approach. It's basically, you know what? I agree that there's something happened, but I don't know what it was. I mean, that's really the best answer I find, unless they just submit and say, yes, Jesus rose from the dead.
That was the answer that I got from a physics professor when I was at Michigan State many years ago, and we were talking about the historical resurrection of Jesus, and I tried to work into it in a paper that I was writing in the physics class there. When I came to see him, I said, "Well, what'd you think?" And he said he liked the paper a lot. And I said, "Well, what'd you think about the resurrection? What do you think happened on that Easter Sunday?" He said, "Well, something happened." That's what he said. Something happened.
There you go. Something happened. Okay. Don't stop there. Don't stop with agnosticism.
Right. Yeah, because you've got, you've got these deaths. James stoned, Paul beheaded, Peter crucified. In other words, they were so certain that they had encountered the risen Christ. That certainty was so certain that they would die for it. I mean, that's they had every reason to second guess themselves, triple guess themselves.
And it's amazing. Sometimes I'm just again amazed when some people will compare it to like Jim Jones and the people who died, drinking Kool-Aid with Jim Jones, or people with David Koresh. You just need almost just less than a minute with them to explain the difference. I mean, look at these men and look at the result of their lives. Look at the result of Jesus' influence in the world. And look at the result of people like Paul and Peter and James. These were good men. These were not maniacs. These were not people sleeping with a bunch of women and doing all these evil things that these cult leaders were doing. I mean, even Bart Ehrman, even some of the top skeptics, they will admit, man, Paul, he was not a charlatan. He was not out there for money. He was weeping over these churches. He was, he wrote the greatest chapter on love that even unbelievers use at their weddings. I mean, these were good men. We have every reason to trust that what they were saying was true. We have no reason to doubt them. There's really no reason other than unless you just have this presupposition that supernatural things don't happen. I mean, and they had that. They knew dead men didn't come back from the dead. They knew dead men stayed dead. And so when Jesus appeared to them, they were as surprised as we are when we first hear it. I mean, I'm amazed when you see those comparisons to the crazy people of recent times. I even heard that recently when I wrote an article and somebody said, "Oh, well, look at Jim Jones and blah blah blah," and I responded to him and I said, "Well, how many followers does Jim Jones have today? Jesus has 2 billion plus followers. I mean, you have to see the difference. You have to see the difference here."
Yeah, and let's go to the one explanation that continues to come up, and that is that, well, yes, they thought they saw something, but it was a figment of their imagination, or in the case of the 500, it was mass hysteria. What do you say to that? They're hallucinating.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really enjoyed reading, a great book on the resurrection is called The Resurrecting Jesus by Dale Allison, who's another excellent New Testament scholar. And, he did this really in-depth coverage of all the literature on hallucinations. And he spends, I think it's like maybe 30 pages of his book that's focused just on the literature of hallucinations. And he shows, basically, you find that in every case, what happened with Jesus is unparalleled in the literature on hallucinations. So, for example, you don't have people experiencing their apparitions or their, the person that they believe, appeared to them or whatever. You don't have it with multiple individuals and groups over an extended period of time. And even with groups, I think in the literature, 8 is like the max you find it. Maybe 8 people had some sort of an experience, maybe with their, dead grandmother or something like that. But you don't have 12. You definitely don't have 500. I mean, this is unparalleled in the literature. And you also never have an enemy. People don't project, their enemy appearing to them, and they also also don't believe that whoever appeared to them rose from the dead. Nobody in the literature. When grandma, who has died recently, when she appears to them, which, these stories do happen, they don't ever go to the tomb, their burial place to see if it's empty. They don't believe that they rose from the dead. So in all these cases, these unparalleled cases, they happen with Jesus. And not to mention the fact that it launched this worldwide largest religion in the world, so it's unlike any hallucination on record. That's I think what we have to say. So I think they're having more faith in the hallucination hypothesis. They're just showing their great faith in the hallucination hypothesis when I think they should just trust in what the evidence leads to, which is a risen Christ.
And you also have the rise of the church, and it's the ongoing expansion of Christianity, that requires some cause that can account for the effect. How do you?
That's right, and there's two ways I like to look at this, and I talk about it in the book. I think the origin, like I said, the singularity, which is the church. What is the cause of it? Because we know Jesus died, we know he died, and then you have this explosive rise right in the place where he died in Jerusalem. So you have to explain that. What got it going? And you can do it individually. What got Peter going? What got Mary going? What got Paul going? So you can do it that way. But then the other way I look at it is, I say, well, if Jesus did rise from the dead and he's still alive, we should expect him to be transforming lives and nations all over the world. I mean, that's what we should expect. And when I look around the world, I mean, when I study history, this is exactly what I think we do see. Yep. I mean, we see just about from every nation on the planet today, the gospel has gone forth. I mean, the gospel is doing exactly what Jesus said it would do, and exactly what John saw in Revelation. He saw in Revelation from every tribe, tongue, and nation, they're praising the Lamb. And we have, the gospel still has places to go in the world, but it's doing that. I mean, I think all the evidence suggests that the gospel is going to go to every nation, tribe, and tongue. I mean, I think we have every reason to believe that with our 2,000-year hindsight now. And that does nothing but confirm the truth of what Jesus said. I will be with you until the very end of the age.
What do you say to people? This goes back to presuppositions that about dead men stay dead. There are people who actually believe that the men and women of the ancient world were more likely to believe in a resurrection of the dead than we are today, as though somehow it was common in their day to have these things happen.
Yeah,
the ancient
really
world they're no more gullible than we are when it comes to this kind of thing, are they?
No, yeah, exactly right. I mean, C.S. Lewis actually has a great line with this when it comes to the virgin birth. He mentions how Joseph's ready to leave Mary because he knows where babies come from. He knows where babies come from, and so he's not some just gullible person. Oh, it's a virgin birth. Okay, yeah, of course I believe that. So it's the same thing with the resurrection. I mean, these people in every way believe that because Jesus was crucified, he's not the Messiah. They were not expecting him to rise again from the dead.
Okay, Justin, thanks. Great book and great job. I thank you so much. I hope we can talk again. You're going to be in the United States very long?
Well, you know what? With the coronavirus, we'll see how long, but at least for a few more months.
All right. We'll talk again. Thanks so much
for having me on. Great conversation.
Thank you so much for being with me. Let me take a moment, though, to thank Paul in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and Tram in Huntington Beach, California, Lois in Franktown, Colorado, Kaylin in Desert Hot Springs, California, and Barbara in Royal Oak, Michigan, because you joined us as partners in this work of the new evangelization. These are difficult times for the Catholic Church globally and in the United States. You can keep us on the air by going to AveMariaRadio.net.
You don't think it'll happen to you twice. First, it was a fire. My agent was right there and helped me rebuild. Then the tornado destroyed everything again. Both times, my independent agent and auto owners took care of me like someone takes care of family.
For whatever lies ahead, we're always there. Auto Owners Insurance.
For your no-obligation quote, please call Choice Insurance at 734-641-4200.
If you believe in the power of prayer, Ave Maria Radio invites you to look at their website to submit a prayer request at AveMariaRadio.net. Your prayer requests are shared with hundreds at the Dominican Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist, the Servants of God's Love, the Monastery of the Blessed Sacrament Cloistered Nuns, the Family of Faith Apostolate, and the staff of Ave Maria Radio. Just go to AveMariaRadio.net and click on the Community tab to submit your prayer request today.
Kresta in the Afternoon is underwritten by the following nonprofit organization, Real Estate for Life. Buying or selling your home or business property? Real Estate for Life can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. When Real Estate for Life receives a referral fee, They donate 80% of the referral check to Ave Maria Radio and Students for Life. More information at realestateforlife.org or 877-LIFE-US1. That's realestateforlife.org.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being with me today. Of course, the Bedrock of Christianity available in our online bookstore by Justin Bass. We'll also have follow-up information on the first hour's guests. I've said many times, at least over the last 10 years, maybe it's more, maybe it's 20 years now, but I've noticed it a long time ago, probably 20 years, that in fact the argument, and I'm speaking here strictly from the standpoint of serious scholarship, the argument for the resurrection, the historic bodily resurrection of Jesus, is actually stronger today from an academic standpoint than it was 20 years ago. A lot of it has to do with the kind of work that's been done on understanding the way traditions in the ancient world were passed on, especially within Palestinian Judaism. There's been an explosion of research in this. Anyway, so, again, St. Paul says, if Christ not raised, your faith is in vain. We want to go back to the bedrock of Christianity. It's the resurrection. I'm Al Kresta.
Kresta in the Afternoon is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. To follow up on any of the guests or information presented on today's program, visit the Kresta Guest Archive at AveMariaRadio.net. That's AveMaria Radio.net. To listen to this or any other edition of Kresta in the Afternoon, visit the audio archives at AveMariaRadio.net. Or to order a CD of the program, call 734-930-4506 or email orders at AveMariaRadio.net. That's 734-930-4506 or orders at AveMariaRadio.net.